When you think of famous explorers of the 20th century, do you imagine those who ventured into the uncharted jungles of South America, risking everything in search of lost cities and ancient civilizations? Forget about Indiana Jones. He's just a fictional character, invented by Spielberg, an American filmmaker with a flair for the dramatic. The real adventurer, the true Indiana Jones, was Colonel Percy Fawcett. And while he wasn't born in Brazil, it was in Brazil that he embarked on the most mysterious adventure of his life. A journey that even inspired Spielberg to create Indiana Jones. So, let's dive into the real story of the real Indiana Jones. It all begins with his birth in Old England. He was born in Torquay, a charming little town on the south coast, in August 1867. Whether it was on the 15th, 16th, or 18th, it doesn't really matter, but it was in that month and year. And in 1886, he enlisted in the Royal Artillery, the British Army's Artillery Regiment. Still in his 20s, Percy Fawcett became a soldier and was promptly dispatched to Ceylon, what we now call Sri Lanka, that fascinating island south of India, which was yet another British colony. From an early age, Fawcett showed himself to be a somewhat arrogant and overbearing military man. They say that during his time in Ceylon, he got involved with a mysterious secret society. After his stint in Ceylon, Fawcett was transferred to Africa, passed through Hong Kong, and even made his way to Morocco, always in territories that were, or had been, part of the British Empire. Although Morocco was a French colony, but that's just a detail. What really matters is that, according to rumors, Fawcett became a secret agent linked to MI6, the British Secret Service. Some even claim he was a double agent, involved with an enigmatic secret society known as the Seven Circles, led by a mysterious figure called Mask Melon, the Masked Magician. Although there's no concrete evidence of this, what we do know for certain is that Fawcett indeed had ties to MI6. That's an undeniable fact. Now, let's rewind a bit. While he was in Ceylon, it's said that Fawcett came into contact with a mysterious statuette, supposedly handed over to the Secret Service by the writer H. Rider Haggard, the author of King Solomon's Mines, a classic adventure novel. Fawcett was believed to have met Haggard personally, as well as Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes and the author of The Lost World, a book set in Brazil's Mount Roraima, based on the explorations of Everard im Thurn, the first to scale Mount Roraima. But that's another story. What really matters is that in 1906, Percy Fawcett was sent by the Royal Geographical Society on a very important mission to map the sources of the Amazon River in that wild region where Bolivia, Peru, and Brazil meet. And it was then that the great adventure of his life truly began. This was in 1906, but then World War I came along, and he stayed until around 1910, between comings and goings. When the war broke out, as expected of a soldier, Fawcett fought in World War I, from 1914 to 1917. After the conflict, he returned to Brazil in 1920, and it was during this time that he gained access to a mysterious document that mentioned the existence of a lost city called Z. This mysterious document, which some say was translated by Richard Francis Burton, raises many questions. Honestly, I doubt that Burton translated anything like that, and I even question the existence of this document. But the legend persists. It is said that Fawcett found a document, supposedly from the Bandeirantes, that indicated the existence of a secret city in the Serra do Roncador. Now, where exactly is the Serra do Roncador? It's located in Barra do Garças, in the state of Mato Grosso, a place shrouded in mysteries, bordered by the Mortes, Xingu, and Araguaia rivers. To this day, it remains a region that is difficult to access and full of enigmas. The Serra do Roncador gets its name because, when the wind blows at night, it makes a sound resembling a snore, echoing through the sandstone rock formations. It's a place with intense energy, almost as if it has its own feng shui, or, as the Chinese call it, geomancy, a science that studies the energy of a place. And there, my friend, the energy is strong. Some even say that there's a crystal-clear lake, 10 meters in diameter, in the Serra do Roncador, which is believed to be a portal to another dimension. But the fact is that in 1925, Colonel Fawcett returned to Brazil with his son, Jack, and a young friend named Raleigh Ramel. By this time, the colonel was already 58 years old, while Jack was in his mid-20s. They embarked on an expedition in search of the lost city of Z. Here's where the story gets even more interesting. Before leaving, Fawcett left a clear message for his family and everyone around him. If I disappear, if I don't return, don't come looking for me. And, in parentheses, because many believe he left this message veiled, he supposedly said, because I will have found the secret passage to that underground world. Yes, according to some, the city of Z was underground, inhabited by superior beings, because, let's face it, they wouldn't be inferior, right? So, in May 1925, Fawcett set out for the Serra do Roncador. His last communication was on May 29, 1925, and after that, silence. The mystery. Colonel Fawcett disappeared. But despite his warning, what did people do? Exactly the opposite. They went after him. Seriously, it's believed that 4 or 5 expeditions were organized to find him, but all ended in failure. No one could locate the colonel. The matter seemed to be closed. Seemed. Until in 1943, a missionary, because, you know, those missionaries are always deep in the jungle, dealing with the indigenous people, claimed to have found a white Indian with blue eyes, who was said to be the son of Jack Fawcett. That's right. And then, who steps in? A.S.K. Chateaubriand, the famous Chateau, who, one day, will definitely have an episode all to himself, because he was simply the boss of the Brazilian press. This guy was responsible for bringing TV to Brazil with TV Tupi, and was the head of Diários Associados, which controlled the country's most influential magazine, O Cruzeiro. This magazine had an incredible team of reporters and photographers. That's when he called one of these reporters, Edgar Morel, a phenomenal journalist, and sent the guy in search of this so-called white Indian from the Xingu. And, believe it or not, he actually found the man. The name of the Indian? Dulepe. And yes, he was albino. I have no idea what his ethnicity was, my sources don't say, but what matters is that he was a poor albino Indian. They took the guy to civilization, apparently all the way to Cuiabá, the capital of the state of Mato Grosso, took photos for O Cruzeiro magazine. But unfortunately, Dulepe's story didn't have a happy ending. He was abandoned, died in poverty, and drowned in alcohol. They destroyed the life of poor Dulepe, who had absolutely nothing to do with Colonel Fawcett. But here's where things start to heat up. How much time has passed in the episode? This one's easily going to hit 50 minutes, no doubt. Just kidding. Because now is when the story really begins. In 1952, the great, extraordinary, fantastic explorer and indigenous rights advocate, Orlando Vilas Boas, received information from the Kalapalo Indians that they were the ones who had killed Colonel Fawcett. And according to them, the colonel's bones were buried at the foot of a large tree. Orlando Vilas Boas went there, exhumed the remains, and it seemed like the mystery was solved. But then, once again, A.S.K. Chateaubriand enters the scene. In 1952, he not only sent a team of reporters from O Cruzeiro to cover the story with Vilas Boas, but also allowed a team from the rival newspaper, Correio da Manhã, to join the expedition. He believed that the competition between the two papers would be good for boosting sales, both of the O Cruzeiro magazine and the rival newspaper. And who goes there? The incredible, the marvelous writer Antonio Calado, who would later write one of the greatest works of contemporary Brazilian literature, Quarup, which takes place, guess where? In the Xingu. Calado also wrote a book called O Esqueleto da Lagoa Verde, The Skeleton of the Green Lagoon, which tells this whole story. First, he recounts Fawcett's journey, and then he details how the bones were found and what happened. But then comes the disappointing part. When they examined the bones, they discovered that they weren't Fawcett's. The story ends on a bit of a downer. The dental structure didn't match, and the height didn't fit Fawcett, who, as a typical Englishman, was a tall and strong man. The bones found didn't match his stature, and so the mystery of Colonel Fawcett remained unsolved. And then there's the controversy. Were the bones really Colonel Fawcett's or not? The mystery stayed alive because many believe he actually found that so-called secret city of Z. And now, he's living deep in the Serra do Roncador, along with Jack, not Jack Sparrow, but Jack Fawcett, his son, and Raleigh Rimmel, all living eternally, happily ever after. But what's also fascinating about this story is that Orlando Villas-Boas, the Brazilian who knew more about indigenous people than anyone, was completely convinced that those bones were indeed Fawcett's. He took the bones and, believe it or not, kept the remains stored under his bed, in a box, from 1952 to 1970. 18 years. That's right, under the bed. Crazy, right? It was only after much insistence from his wife that he decided to hand over the remains to the Forensic Medicine Institute, affiliated with the University of São Paulo. And here's another curious detail. Colonel Fawcett's relatives refused to do a DNA test to confirm if the bones were really his, perhaps because the mystery was more lucrative than the truth. Fawcett's surviving son, Brian Fawcett, who didn't participate in the ill-fated expedition, wrote a book called Exploration Fawcett between the late 1950s and early 1960s and made good money from it. There's also a Brazilian, Hermes Leal, who wrote a book called The Brazilian Indiana Jones, because, in fact, Fawcett is said to have been one of the inspirations for Spielberg's famous character. The way he dressed, the style, the pipe, all of this is said to have been inspired by the Colonel, who was well known both in England and the United States. Now, Hermes Leal's book is much better than the book by American David Gran, The Lost City of Z, which was turned into a film. And the movie? Well, it's a disappointment, to say the least. So, to sum it up, you know, there was a bad movie, a so-so book, but on the bright side, there's a wonderful book by Antonio Calado, O Esqueleto da Lagoa Verde, and now you've just watched a fascinating episode about Colonel Fawcett. Here on the Stay Curious channel, we take you straight into the most intriguing mysteries in world history. So don't forget to leave your like, share the video, subscribe to the channel, and be careful not to disappear. Because if anyone's going to disappear, it'll be me. And remember, stay curious.